Hey guys, the Robrovsky guy here, and this is going to be a video on how to use and how to properly feed Hazel Hamster to your different hamsters. I've been getting a lot of questions, as always, about food and nutrition and diet, so I thought I'd pump this video out for you guys before I actually make my own hamster diet video. That's going to be kind of like a part 2 to the original video that I made on my channel a while back ago, so that video is going to be different from this one. This video is only going to be about Hazel Hamster and using it as the main mix. So if you guys do use Hazel Hamster for your main hamster seed mix, make sure to stick around, or if you do plan on buying it in the future, also make sure to stick around as well. I'm going to be going over a lot of different things, so make sure you pay attention and stay attentive, because there's a lot of different things that you guys may not know about the mix that are not so good and that are good. So let's just get right into the video. So there you guys have it. This is the inside of the bag, a brand new bag. I have not touched anything inside of it yet, and it looks like this bag is pretty much full of the whole peanuts. My last bag did not have too many of the whole peanuts, as you guys can see right there. There's about 4 in this shot right here. You guys can see that it also has a bunch of different things. You guys can see the tiny pecans. There's also some cereal in there, ground corn, crushed corn, some peas, and there's also, of course, the regular corn itself, and a couple of lab blocks right there and right there. So I'm going to be taking out every single content of this seed mix, and I'm going to be going over how often you should be feeding each piece for each different type of hamster breed. I'll be talking about Syrians, dwarfs, and I'll also be talking about robos, because of course they're a little bit different compared to the other dwarfs as well. So we'll get into that right now. So here you guys see that there is all of the things that are inside of the Hazel Hamster seed mix. I just have a tiny little bowl to the side that I'll be using later, but I'll quickly just go over each of the pieces that you guys are looking at right here. This is a whole peanut. This is actually the uncracked peanuts that you will pretty much more often than not, you'll rarely find them inside the seed mix, but mine seem to have pretty much a plethora this time. So sometimes you might have more, sometimes you might have less. Now, depending on which hamster you have, these should vary pretty much a lot too. We'll start off with Syrians. Since Syrians are more okay with, fattening items and more sugary items, they can be fed more often than dwarfs and robos, but personally I wouldn't give a whole peanut like this every week or so. I'd probably give it maybe about every other week for a Syrian. That's pretty much a more suitable time. If you want, you can even go longer than that, because there are, as you guys can see over there, right here, there are uncracked peanuts as well, or excuse me, cracked peanuts as well. So those are also inside the mix that'll go over towards the end as well. So these can be fed to Syrians about every other week. Maybe even longer if you guys want for that. For dwarfs, probably a little bit more sparingly. I tend to feed my robos these whole actual peanuts every month. Because of course they have 2 whole entire peanuts inside of them, so I tend to feed it about every month or so for the robos. And with a winter white or any other type of dwarf, I would also go even maybe a little bit longer than that as well, because of course they are very fattening, and it's not very necessary to be feeding that many fattening things in this tiny little peanut here. So that's one of the things that you'll find a little bit less than all the other ones, but it's in there as well. You have these cereals. I don't really have any benchmark for this. This is pretty much almost about 20 to 25% of the whole entire seed mix. So cereals are really common inside, so it doesn't really matter how many you put in for per day, but it's fine to have them in there as well. Ground corn, personally, I recommend that you almost never feed this. Personally, as soon as you would get a bag of Hazel Hamster, I really suggest you pick out all the peas and all the corn, because Hazel Hamster contains almost 30 to 35% of peas and corn. So that's pretty much the entire mix in itself, is peas and corn. So I definitely recommend, if you are going to be feeding even to a Syrian, I definitely recommend at least picking out 3/4, maybe about 70 to 80% of all the corn and peas, because again, it's a very fattening thing. I mean, of course, corn has a lot of carbohydrates in it as well, where it gets all the fat from too, especially ground corn. I definitely don't recommend feeding this very often. Definitely make sure that you pick out as much as you can of those, because they're really not beneficial as well. If you are going to be feeding this type of corn towards the end, for me, I feed my robos like one of these pieces every week, so I wouldn't go any more than that, because again, very high in cholesterol. cholesterol. For cereals, I guess you could be a little bit more flexible. Maybe 2 a week, 3 a week, that would be fine. But I definitely don't recommend using the ground corn at all. The next thing we have is a dark lab block, because there are a couple different variations of lab blocks inside the mix. This is the ones that my robos tend to hate. They'll eat the other two, but they do not like this one at all, so it just kind of might depend. Again, these are very common in the seed mix, so I can't really give a benchmark on how often to be feeding these, but again, you'll find it very often inside the seed mix. The next thing we have are sunflower seeds. This is pretty much one of the only seeds that Hazel Hamster contains, and of course you guys can see that they're very small, so that's also very good, so you can feed them in a larger quantities. I like to feed my robos about 3 of these per day, the day that there's seed mix is going on, so about 3, anywhere between 3 to 5 a day is suitable. For cereals, I wouldn't go over 5, maybe 5 would be a good amount per day. That would, probably be pretty suitable for them, again because they are larger. For dwarfs, you might want to go anywhere like 3 to 4. I probably wouldn't go 5, but 3 to 4 per day is also another suitable amount. Here we have the ground peas, which again, like I said, with the ground corn, I do recommend you take most of this, if not all of this, out of the seed mix, because it's really not necessary to be feeding this so much, because again, it is very, very common inside the seed mix. So it's your call on whether you want to take them out or just kind of put them to the sides. Here we have these tiny little like pecan things. Again, these are also very common. I can't give another benchmark for these because again, they are also very common, so you'll get a lot of scoops out of this every time you get ready to refill the food bowl. The next thing we have are the gray lab blocks. You guys can see that they are a little bit different excuse me, than the black ones. The gray ones are a little bit softer on texture and kind of resemble Oxbow's Healthy Handfuls. They aren't actually made of Timothy hay like Oxbow Healthy Handfuls is. They're made of, again, a different type of grounded corn, but again, these are also very common inside the seed mix, so I can't really give another benchmark, but anywhere for lab blocks of these size, 2 to 3 per day is a good amount to get a nice amount of protein in there as well. But again, these are very common, so don't worry too much about those. And then we have the last form of lab block, which is the skinny, almost beige or tan lab block. These come in a smaller size, as you guys can see. My robos tend to eat these the most. They actually also resemble Carefresh Complete's lab blocks, just a little bit larger. These, as you guys can see, they're actually kind of cut off at angles. Again, I can't really give another benchmark for this because it is so common, but you will see this pretty often inside the seed mix as well. And here we have the actual corn pieces, just pretty much like any other corn out there. I definitely recommend, like I said earlier, to take out these because again, they are a really high quantity in there in an average seed mix for Hazel Hamster. So if you have the time and the patience to take out one or pretty much most of these, I would definitely recommend that because you should not be feeding any more than 1 to 2 of these per week. That's just me. I'm not a really good supporter of corn, so I definitely recommend that you try to do your best to limit these as much as you can to your hamsters. And for cereals, like I said, you might be a little bit more flexible, but for dwarfs and robos, I definitely wouldn't recommend feeding it as often. Maybe 1 or 2 per week would be a sound amount. And lastly, we have a unshelled peanut. These come in different shapes and sizes, of course, just like any other peanut. You guys can see this is about half of one, and for these, it's a little bit more easy to make a benchmark on these since they're smaller and they don't actually contain the shell around them. I like to give my robos one of these about every 3 weeks or so, just as a little tiny snack because again, peanuts and different types of nuts are really high in fat, so that's not really a good thing that, oops, excuse me, dropped that. That's not really a good thing to have into the diet on a daily basis as well. So about 3 weeks for robos, maybe even longer for dwarfs. Every other week would be fine for cereals as well. So definitely recommend to also stay very cautious on these as well. So that's pretty much the overall view of each of the items. Now let's go into the how many scoops and how many tablespoons and things of that nature. We'll fill up this bowl and I'll show you guys what it should look like in the end. So this is definitely what your food bowl should not look like here. You guys can see there is a bunch of pieces of corn. There's grounded corn, there's peas, there's even half the peanut there. Too many things here, and you guys can see also it is pretty much filled about halfway, which is something is pretty much way too much to be feeding. You guys can also see there is a piece of Timothy hay here. Not very common. I didn't put it in the overview because, again, it's not very common. You'll find it once in a while inside the seed mix, but it's in there as well. This is not what your food bowl should be looking like on a daily basis. It's got way too many peanuts in here, way too much corn. So now I'm going to show you guys what it should be looking like on a day-to-day basis. So this is more like what your food bowl should be looking like. You guys can see there are a tiny little peanut right there. There's also a good balance of lab blocks to cereal ratio. There's also some sunflower seeds in there as well. And you guys can see there is no corn and no peas anywhere in here besides there is one piece of corn that I'll show you guys. It's somewhere right here. There you go. You guys can see there's one piece of corn for a good mix as well. And there's also one tiny squash pea right over there. So that, is a good mix for a day-to-day basis. Of course, you may also add other things. I like to add millet to my mixes, sometimes even some bird seed if you have it laying around. Oats are also available, but again, be careful with those since those are very high in fat as well. You guys can be creative with it. Just make sure not to go overboard on the peanuts and the corn and peas because that's really what consists mainly of Hazel Hamster. So hopefully you guys know what to do now. I've been getting a lot of questions on like how many tablespoons do I put in, or should I be picking anything out, and things of that nature. So hopefully the video answered your guys' questions. If you guys have any other questions that I might not have answered, please let me know in the comment section. I'll try and help you out the most. That's pretty much it for the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.